I'm Melody Geraci. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. We're going to go ahead and get started. The recording is started. And we are, this is the third iteration of our webinar series on the Illinois Transportation Enhancements Program. And the majority of our time today is going to be spent with questions and answers. It's your final chance to have a live audience, so to speak, with IDOT officials. John Paris is here, Brian McCoy is here, and we'll be moderating the question and answer as we have in previous sessions, where if you have a question, please make sure you put it into the Q&A box, not the chat box, but the Q&A, question and answer, so that we will be able to better moderate and manage the questions. And we're going to do our best to try and type out the answers as well, so that there's a little bit of a documentation there. And of course, as always, we will be publishing the questions and answers on our FAQ section of our website page that we'll talk about in just a minute. So without further ado, let's get to it. Once again, we'll be posting the recording on that resource page, activetrans.org/ITEP, and post your questions in the Q&A, and there is closed captioning available for today's webinar. Just a quick reiteration, this webinar is being brought to you by the Illinois State Physical Activity and Nutrition Program, which is a grant funded project through the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and administered by the Illinois Public Health Institute, and Active Transportation Alliance is a partner. And this is our third iteration. Once again, if you missed part one or part two, and part two honestly is the place, or the session with the most meat on the bone, so to speak, where we go step by step through the application, through the mapping, the community mapping score process and all of that stuff. So if you're looking for some dig deep detail, you can just watch that page through that, or fast forward to your favorite section. So the ITEP cycle for 2022 closes on September 30th. That is a week from Friday at 5 p.m. Central Time. There's $125 million on the table in both state and federal funding combined, and the announcements are expected to be awarded or announced. Excuse me, the awards are expected to be announced in spring of 2023. Don't forget that there is also a resource page on the ITEP website, and on the IDOT website. An ITEP grant page has the application portal itself, got updated guidelines, a sample application, a sample cost table, the GATA pre-award documentation that you need to be filling out and having ready for your application, and then the Active Trans resource page that we mentioned before. And a little bit of final detail on submitting your application. It is an online process only. No paper application is required. You do not need to mail in a hard copy this year. Once you're on the on the application site, you can save your application, go back to it later. But when you're ready to finalize and submit it, click that button, and you should receive an automated email notification that your application went through. There's the deadline once again, and remember, this is an important one, that there's a 35 megabyte limit for attachments. So be judicious as much as you can with what you're uploading as attachments. And there are character limits within the application itself. So once again, brevity is a value to be highly prioritized. And with that, let's just do this. I'm going to end the slideshow, and we're going to go ahead and just keep our gallery up and available. If you have a question, once again, put it in the Q&A. I'm going to go through them, and hopefully John and Brian will get the kinds of answers to you that you need. And if not, you can always follow up with us later, and we'll try and dig a little deeper and see what we can figure out. So let's get started. The first question I see on the list is from Jessica Robbins. Jessica asks, our community score is below 40 because we're so rural. Will that disqualify our application?
And the answer is no. Will not disqualify your application. The community score is what we use to determine if and how much state assistance you get with your local match. And we do not know what those cutoffs will be until we receive all the applications. So don't assume that 40 is either good or bad.
Right. Very good. Mark asks, on the GATA budget template, and I remember this being a question from last year too, or 2 years ago as well, excuse me, what is considered the fiscal year for the application itself in section A? Does anyone know?
Should be 2023.
Is it this? Yeah, is it the state fiscal year? Yeah. 2023.
Yep. Is that correct, Brian?
Yes, so that's going into this next cycle. Yep.
2023. Great. Back to Jessica again. The attachment max is 35 megabytes. Is that a combined total for all attachments? Excuse me, or is that for each? I think that's for all combined, correct? Is that right, John?
Yes.
Yeah. Brian. Okay, thanks. Let's see. On the GATA budget template, once again, there's no location for the right-of-way acquisition cost. Can you verify that they are not included in the construction cost line in both sections A and B?
I will pass that one to Brian because I do not have that template in front of me.
Okay.
Okay, I will just double check on that. A place to put the funding for the right of way, I believe there was, but I will just take a look real quick and I'll get back with it.
Great. Back to Jessica asking about that there was a request not to put links into your application for attachments, but would it be acceptable to attach a slide with links? I think that's what you're asking, Jessica. So I'm guessing you're asking if there was an attachment that listed out links. Go ahead and clarify that in your question if you can. We'll come back to that one. Another question about the favorable community score range to be eligible for state match funding. This person would like to know if their project has a chance of getting those funds. Again, I think John answered that it's really hard to tell until all the applications get in, because it will skew, whichever way once all of the scores are in, that's what the point at which they start making those determinations. Right, John?
Yes, I can say that the last cycle 14, was the first time we used the community score. And the lowest community score, and I'm off the top of my head, I believe was 18. The highest score was 83. And using that range, we determined that scores of 0 through 39 did not receive state assistance. Scores 40 through 49 received 50% of their local match, and scores above 50 then received 100% of their local match. But again, until we know what the full range of scores are for all of the applications, we honestly don't know where those cutoffs will be.
John, could you repeat those cycles? The score, the previous cycle?
Yeah, scores 0 through 39 did not receive state assistance. Scores 40 through 49 received 50% state assistance towards their match, and scores 50 and above received 100% of their local match.
Great. Herman asks, in the state funding portion of the guidelines, and he's got quotations here, and the conversion of 4 abandoned railroad corridors to trails projects. Do you have the locations of these potential projects?
No, we don't.
Great.
If I'm understanding his question, in our office, we do not know where all of the abandoned railroad corridors are. I would talk possibly to your IDOT district office. They may be able to help.
Okay, great. Brian or John, I guess, but would either of you be able to find that URL, the web address for the sample application? The one that Jessica is mentioning that she found said it wasn't filled in. Is that because it's not, is it a sample application, just a blank sample, or is it one that's like an example of one that's been filled out?
Okay, yeah, I understand what she's saying. We have not filled out samples because there are so many variables, when it comes to the different types of criteria or category of projects. So there is not one completely filled out now.
Okay. This is a good one. So someone is putting together an application. They have a community score 44, which allows the local match to be, well, would potentially fall in that range of a 90-10, but the application still shows up as 80-20. That's always going to be the case. Am I right? Regardless of what your community score is, it's always going to stay 80-20 in the application.
Yes, yeah. Going into the application again, because we don't know where any of those cutoffs are regarding the state assistance for the match, everything, this is an 80-20 project. So if you don't receive any additional state funding towards your local match, it is an 80-20 program. So that's what we assume going in, and that if you do receive some of your match assistance, then that will change after the awards.
Great. So on the application, John, should people just leave the match portion of the cost estimate blank if they are one of those communities that it's completely contingent on whether they get a match or not?
Everything should be filled out assuming 80-20.
Assuming 80-20.
Yep.
Okay. Great. Jeff, I'm sorry. I'm going to apologize for our team that we've been meaning to get back to you on your question here about who to contact for the letter from IDOT, the allowance letter from IDOT. We've been meaning to get back to you, and Maggie is unexpectedly out today. So go ahead and could someone,
Melody, just so you're aware, I sent a response to that question.
great.
Stephen
And
just
you can
answered
send an
it.
email to the dot.d1.bikes@illinois.gov.
Very good. Thank you. And that was a district one specific question. Great. Thank you. So let's see. On the get a budget template. Okay, we already talked about that one. Brian, do you have your hand up? Do you want to, is there something you want to say? I see your.
Oh yeah, I was just following up. With the answer to that the budget template. So the budget template doesn't have a specific right of way. Everything that is not engineering services goes under construction. ITEP, how we fill out that budget template is very simplified. It's either engineering services, which is PE1, PE2, or C, and then break those out. And then everything else falls under construction. And there is some instructions on the website that simplifies that a little bit more. Just it tries to help you out and filling that form out, make it a little bit more simplified, because there's way much more going on with that form than ITEP is really requiring. So definitely follow those instructions. It'll help you out and make it really easy.
Great. Jessica's asking, will folks be dinged if they don't reach the max characters in the narrative?
No,
Really?
no, you will not be dinged. That's
No,
less,
no.
that's less for me to read.
Pithy
No.
is not, pithiness is not being handicapped.
Brief and thorough.
Yeah, brief and thorough. There you go. Non-attendee asks, do the character counts include spaces? I don't know. Yeah, if you're writing it in Word,
I
and
would
then
say the
copy and paste.
characters, yeah, it does
Probably.
include spaces.
That's
Probably
what it
does.
usually does.
Yes.
Angie asks, if your project is over 3 million, what should she do?
Probably, I'm guessing maybe this question has to do with the funding table in the application. Fill out the funding table using the cost for the entire project. The funding table will not let you request more than $3 million. So say you've got a $6 million project, we could possibly give you $3 million. The other $3 million you will have to come up with yourself.
Mm-hmm. And you should explain how you're paying for the rest of it.
Yes.
At some point. Yeah.
Yep.
In your narrative. Great. Will we get scored for having a PDR if we have an engineer on board and the PDR is in progress?
We do score project readiness, and you will receive higher scores the closer you are to putting a shovel in the ground. So yes, tell us about your PDR. If it's submitted and submitted, approved, wherever it is.
Great. Daniel asks, for the GATA uniform budget, it's a separate budget narrative required. Is it a separate budget narrative required as described in section C, or is the detailed cost estimate sufficient?
Detailed cost estimate is sufficient.
Great. Another question from a different Daniel. With the last ITEP cycle in 2020, the program made changes to allow for ITEP to be used for phase 1. Of course, that is still the case for this cycle. Do you all have recommendations for strong exhibits that the scoring committee likes to see for projects that have yet to complete a phase 1 planning?
I'm not sure what he means. I would say that you would want to include anything that gives us a strong indication of where you are in the process. If you have documents, then you can attach those. If it's just narrative, let us know where you're at in the process, and that will help us to more accurately score the project readiness criteria.
Great. Do you have any advice on overlapping funds? What if folks receive multiple funding from the county or from federal agency? Can they receive multiple funding from Illinois for transfer an ITEP project?
On the what's it called, the project cost page of your application, there is a box for comments. If you're receiving other funding from other places, just type that in there and let us know where you're getting funding from. Keep in mind that you cannot use federal transportation funds for your local match or anything like that. So be careful of that.
Got it. I'm going to go back to Jessica's question about the attachments. She's clarifying, saying that having an attachment that leads to a set of Google Slides that contains the information as opposed to an actual document attachment. I wish, Jessica, I'm not sure I understand the question.
I think I understand what she means. She's
course.
asking if she can include links in a sheet of links so links that can be accessed from the document that's been uploaded
So if you had a Word document
versus the actual document itself.
right,
Is that
and
allowed?
I can
on
probably answer that. So
Go ahead, Brian.
links, Google Docs, you can't have that as your application. It has to be uploaded and it has to be saved separately because the application can be, otherwise those links can be edited. So it needs to be saved and uploaded. And that's at that point in time, that is what it looks like. And we have that document and it cannot be edited.
Got it. I understand
That makes
the idea trying to get around, not get around, but increase the ability, try to get around the file size limit by attaching a document that has a link and then the link goes to larger files. But I think you got your answer there. Let's see here. On the GATA unit application, it asks for funding opportunity program field. Where do I find this or what do I provide? Another GATA question.
Opportunity program field.
Let's put a pin in that and let
Yeah.
our folks look for it and see if we can come back to it, Sue.
Brian, can you look at that? Thanks.
Yeah, I'll try to look for funding opportunity program field. I believe it's probably one of those the codes, but
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with that.
Okay, Rupa is asking about the circular letter that was issued. The GATA is no longer a requirement for grants. So there is a little bit of confusion about that if you were reading some of that information.
I will say that you are correct, but when the highway bill was written, sometimes they're a little vague in how they write things. So there is, we have a team of people here from a couple of different bureaus trying to interpret exactly what some of that wording means and how it was intended. So at this point, until we get an official, formal, final answer, we are just running status quo. Go ahead and keep doing your GATA. Keep filling out those forms and submitting them. Believe me, as soon as we know, we will be screaming it from the rooftops. So we will want everybody to know that those would not be required anymore. But at this point, yes, we're just keeping everything in place until we know exactly what we're looking at. Right.
Yeah, we had talked about this before, that there just wasn't quite enough time for the state to get its hands around what is the alternative, was the alternative process for, authenticating your financial health to GATA, if that's no longer a requirement. So for this particular grant cycle, there just wasn't enough time to figure that out, but hopefully for future, there will be a workaround or something different. Drew asks, we received a state 1.2 million appropriation to construct a ped bridge over a railroad to connect two communities, which does not cover the full cost of the bridge, which is closer to 1.7. Might we pledge those dollars as our match and apply for ITEP funds to cover the rest and a connector path?
I would suggest that shoot us an email, Drew, because that sounds pretty specific. We'll have to know exactly what kinds of funds they are and what you're looking to do. That is pretty specific, and we'd probably be better off having a conversation about that. And we'd be happy to do that.
Great. Jack asks, do the municipal board resolutions or letters need to have an explicit dollar amount in them based on their estimates, or can they just be more broad and say we commit to meeting any match requirements?
Yeah, I would, you do not have to have a specific dollar amount. I would say that, yes, you're committed to, and at this point, remember when you're doing this is still an 80-20 program.
Mhm.
So I would commit at least 20% or what was the verbiage you just used, Melody?
What required match?
Yeah, or required match.
Great. Yeah, obviously, because if your council met a month and a half ago and authorized a letter, you're not going to know. You're not going to have those final dollar amounts figured out yet. Okay, can a consultant submit? Yes, on behalf of a local public agency. Yes, the consultant can, but the public agency has to be the sponsor. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah, but you can be the applicant. Consultant can be the applicant. Under the GATA budget template, do we need to break down costs into disciplines like removals or hardscape, or can we simply put the overall construction costs for state share and non-state share?
You do not need to break those costs down.
Yeah, I have specific instructions in there, exactly what they need to be broken down to, such as their CE and the different engineering PE1, PE2. It's all in there in the instructions. Just follow it. Only a couple
Great.
pages.
Thanks, Brian. Jody, interesting question. Our municipality is working on getting a UEI assigned. That's the new process as opposed to a SAM. Sorry, SAM number.
DUNS number.
DUNS number. Jeez, DUNS number. I get them all mixed up. Yeah, go ahead, Brian. Go ahead, John.
I would hate to say no, but I'd have to say no.
Yeah.
We need to have the GATA forms filled out.
Was this Jody's question about
Yes.
the UEI?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, that's a tough one. If you're waiting on that UEI number, yeah, go ahead and do the GATA anyway. Michelle asks, the ITEP page has a link to Amplifund. To confirm, we are not using Amplifund, but IDOT has its own application page and its own login. Yes.
That is true. We do not use Amplifund.
Okay. Perfect. Next question, should the approved PDR be included with the application? Will that help?
You can, but on the project cost page, or actually on the project readiness page, where it asks about PDR, there's a comment box, and you can just say that your PDR has been approved and give us the date.
Great. Jessica has a suggestion, which is that she's been typing out her narratives in a Google Doc and checking the word count there. I'm guessing Google Doc accounts for spaces and maybe Word does not. So maybe that's a tactic. Okay, Daniel, they have not secured easements from all landowners at this point, but have letters of support from each. Do you have any recommendations to emphasize the commitment of those landowners beyond the support letters, or the support letters sufficient?
Support letters are sufficient at this point. That is fine. That tells us that you have been in contact, that they are in support, and that's good.
Great. Jessica, I guess we're still not interpreting your question right. So let's maybe take that one offline and see if we can get it answered for you separately, since we don't have a capability to unmute folks on this webinar platform. So we'll get back to you after this, after today.
Oh, okay, so I think she's talking about the type of document, not links to those documents. So
Oh,
by slides, I'm guessing like PowerPoint slides,
yeah,
community involvement summaries. So that's just information that's going into the document. So
sure. I think
and please write back, Jessica, if that's not what you meant.
Yeah, you're talking almost like screenshot type things.
yeah, just
Yeah.
PDF it or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
PDF is not a verb, by the way. That's all I ever say is convert it to a PDF document.
PDF it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. If you have a link to your project website, then yeah, you can provide that link in your document, and then reviewers can probably click on that and just get a overarching view. They can take a look at that or something. It might be helpful, but not as a required, like if it's a required document, do not link to an external document. It's just additional information that's like a public website that happens to be already published.
Right. Got it. Perfect.
Okay.
Should the cost to relocate electric lines underground for streetlights be included in street lighting or utility relocation in the estimate?
That would be utility relocation.
Perfect. Robert hears that federal funds for local match are not allowed. Can the local match be MFT? And if not, our community collects a local MFT. Can they use those funds?
Is Greg Lupton on the phone? He can make that distinction.
Yeah, motor fuel tax funds can certainly be used as a match, and in addition to local motor fuel tax funds, really, as far as a match goes, as long as it's not a federal transportation fund, you should be able to use that as a match.
Great. Okay, so the answer is yes to both. We had this question on Monday in a separate call for the transportation management area. Does that refer to your IDOT district? I think the answer is
No.
MPO. No.
Right. Yeah, the answer is no. Transportation management area is, let's see, not sure how to explain this because it can be confusing. In Illinois, we have 16 MPOs, but we only have 5 TMAs. And those are basically areas within the MPOs that have over 200,000 people. The TMAs, yeah, I don't want to say too much because I don't want to confuse anybody. TMAs also have a pot of money, and they have their own grant programs, but those would be part of the MPO. That is clear as mud, I'm sure.
So maybe contact your MPO.
Yeah.
And if you don't have one, you don't have one. Right. Okay. Local public agency will not be meeting until after September 30th. Therefore, they cannot pass commitment of the local match until early October. It was committed under another program. Can this be submitted after September 30th?
Shoot us an email, and we understand that, this almost becomes an issue every funding cycle for every program, because the councils do not necessarily meet on a regular basis. So shoot us an email, and also put attach a blank page in your application, a blank page that says that there will be a delay in getting the government resolution. Tell us what date we can expect to receive it. We must receive it before applications go to the reviewers. And that will be second or third week of October.
Great.
So there's a little bit of a grace period there.
Yeah. Okay, great.
But again, it's all about communication. And
Yeah.
then this goes for anything in your application. The more you communicate to us, the better.
Right. Yeah, I remember last time we were trying to figure this whole situation out when councils weren't meeting because of COVID and weren't allowed to meet virtually because it wasn't permitted, you know, in their bylaws or whatever. So there was some confusion there, but it's good to know there's that bit of grace period, but definitely let them know if that's going to be the case. And Jessica, third time's a charm. I think what you're saying is she wants to know if she can include additional information as a slideshow attachment, which is, I think what we were saying before, either as a PowerPoint file or a PDF of a PowerPoint. Absolutely, if you've got enough room in that file upload
Yep.
limit. Drew, I'm gonna skip you for a minute.
Brian has his hand up.
Oh, please go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I was just going to just let you know, answer that question about the opportunity number. So the funding opportunity number that was also presented in your webinar slides. You know, it's 1,000,2339, and also funding opportunity title is the cycle 15-2022. The wording in the question seems a little bit off because there's not actually a wording exactly like in the question, but the closest I can see is the funding opportunity number. So
Okay.
hopefully that clears it up a little bit. If not, then if you could point out exactly, requote that, what you were looking and asking for in that grant application.
Brian, what was that funding opportunity number again? We can type that out.
1,000-2339.
Okay, great.
It got copied and pasted into the question.
Oh, perfect. Thanks, Crispina.
Yeah, I have the host and panel. Yeah, thanks.
And Crispina, can you stick in there somewhere our email address, dot.itep@illinois.gov?
Yep, that's in today's in the webinar slides too, when you check our website later.
Yep.
And
Thanks.
in every other previous webinar we've ever given on this topic.
So that's sorry, Melody.
Go ahead.
I'm trying to navigate all these windows.
Yeah.
So that's just idot.itep@illinois.gov.
No, not IDOT, DOT,
DOT.
DOT.itep.
dot.itep@illinois.gov. Thank you,
Yep.
John.
Uh-huh.
Great. Jack, you're welcome, no problem. Drew, if you have a minute, could you, you just say thanks at the bottom. Okay, I think we must have gotten to your question. If you have more you want to ask, go ahead and type it back in. Back to the municipal board resolution. Does the text need to say they're committing 20%? And I think we answered that. We are committing up to 20% or whatever the requirement is, whatever the required match
Yes.
ends up being, would be enough.
Right.
Word documents do account for spaces. Thank you, Abby. So if you're typing in a Word document and you're doing a word count, that should give you the accurate word count for when you copy and paste. I pay no attention. I would know this in the moment if I'm doing it. I'm like, oh yeah, of course it does. And then 30 seconds later, I've totally forgotten that fact. So Jody, she has a project for a municipality. She or he has a project for a municipality that is a streetscape project that also has a shared use path, including a streets included in the streetscaping. Should they apply for a bike ped application, or does it have to be streetscape?
First answer would be read the guidelines and see which one it fits into best. Otherwise, I would fall to what is the greatest amount of cost. Is it in streetscape items, or is it on the actual path?
Great.
And if you if you still can't figure that out, and I understand how that can become confusing, get with us and we will help you figure out the best way to go on that.
Perfect. What is the required attachment, quote, of summary of public involvement entail?
That, give us a summary of public involvement. Have you had a public meeting? Have you sent out surveys? Have you, do you have letters of support from the community? If it's near a school, have you talked to the school? Have you talked to local businesses, law enforcement, all of that stuff? How is your community involved?
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. Go to the whatever planning document you're referring to, whatever plan this project has been included in.
Yep.
Go to that public involvement process. You know, we did this many open houses, had an open comment period, whatever. And the public indicated that this was something that they really wanted. We talked to a school district, we talked to the business community, whatever. And just summarize it in the narrative or in a document.
Melody, Brian has his hand up, and we also have an
Yes.
attendee who has their hand up also.
Okay, Brian, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't have anything. Go ahead. That was from earlier.
Oh, it was from earlier. Great. Attendee with your hand up, go ahead and try and please type that into a question if you are able. Let's see here. Where are we? If there are ineligible items involved in the project, are those items required to be included in the budget template under non-state share?
They should be.
Okay.
Required is a strong word.
This is a strong word.
Yeah,
Are zip files okay to upload?
sure.
I agree. So, yeah, that
Great.
non-state share is you can put some of your your ineligible items. However, we're primarily focused with the state total. So,
Anita, I think this question came up one time before. Can they use a resolution that was passed for the last ITEP cycle for the same project? Or did they need to get a brand new resolution?
You need a new resolution.
And we're getting to the bottom here. Matt asks, they've received some requests from local agencies about whether roadway paving or resurfacing is eligible with a streetscape project. Can someone elaborate?
The big answer is no, but contact us and ask us. It's kind of a case-by-case basis, depending on the other work that's being done.
Great. Michael, no problems. We are totally in, we are a very loose organization in terms of inadvertent hand raises. William, are non-eligible items allowed to be included as the 20% match?
Are non-eligible items allowed to be included as the 20% match? Well, that is part of the funding that you are providing. So yeah.
So if you're paying for the ineligible items as part of the overall project, that could be considered your match.
Mhm.
Okay. Let's see here. We answered this one. I'm just going to take a minute to run through some of these to make sure I've gotten to everybody. There's another suggestion from an attendee that to the question about where do right-of-way costs go. A suggestion that they put it under miscellaneous costs before. Is that something that IDOT would recommend or say is okay?
Honestly, if you just use engineering services and construction, you're good.
Great.
yeah, was that referring to the budget template again? That was the question.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. The right of way goes under construction. And again,
Terrific.
refer to the instructions that's provided on the website.
Excellent. Anonymous, yes, the Q&As will be available after the webinar. That's on the Active Trans webpage, activetrans.org/ITEP. And it's a long page of stuff. So we try to put the most recent information at near the top, but you might need to scroll through a little bit to find what you're looking for. If a project is shovel ready, says Herman, and received bids under a previous ITEP cycle, is a new PDR required?
We'll fall to Mr. Lupton on that one.
If the scope remains the same, there shouldn't be a requirement for a new PDR. If you've met the NEPA requirements under the original project and the scope is still the same, if I'm understanding the question correctly, then you wouldn't have to redo a PDR. Only time you'd have to redo it is if there's a scope change in the type of work or location of work.
Wonderful. A couple of things asking us to verify if non-eligible items can be part of the match. And then as kind of associated, can a 50-50 local match for right-of-way be considered part of the 20%? Also, stand for the 20% local match for the project.
Okay, both of those things are starting to confuse me now.
Yeah. Let's start with the first.
I'm not any funding that the local provides, whether it's for non-eligible items, whether it's for whatever, can be used as the match. So I'm not sure, maybe I'm not understanding that question. And the same with the second question on the 50-50 local match.
Yeah, I guess the second question is the 50% for the local match and the 20% for the project itself separate things?
No.
Okay.
No, your match is your match.
Your match is your match. Okay, so
Right.
if you're making a 50% commitment to a right-of-way match, that can also stand for the 20%.
Yeah.
That would cover the 20% if it's enough money. If
Right.
it's dollar
Yeah,
amounts.
yeah,
are
yeah.
enough, right?
If the dollar amounts work out, then yeah.
Or if it's not enough, then you just need to add
You-
what's left over.
Right.
In, right?
Right.
To make a total of the 20% of the total project.
Yep.
Okay. Can ITEP funds be used for CE?
Yes,
What is CE?
construction engineering.
Oh, gotcha.
That's the engineering that happens while construction is underway
Gotcha.
and
PE1,
after.
PE2, and CE. Got
Yep.
it. Okay, I think, David, we talked about the allowance letter. This is the letter that you'll get from IDOT if you have a project that is on, adjacent to, or approaching, bisecting a state road. Correct?
Yes, anything that comes near state right of way.
Yep.
We want you to talk to the district and let them know what the project is that you're proposing. They'll take a look at it. And as long as they don't have any issue with it going forward, they will give you a letter that states that.
Right. And if your project has nothing to do with any state right of way, then you don't need an allowance letter.
Right.
And then the only question I see here left was the one about the railroad corridors, which we answered. And the municipal board resolution, which we answered as well, does not, it needs to say that they're committed to covering any required amount of match, whatever that may be. Is flexible match still an option for right away?
Back to Mr. Lupston.
Yeah, it should be. I don't think we have any restrictions on what types of funds flexible match can be used on. So it still needs to meet the flexible match criteria, of course, but if you have certain items like right away or something that have been purchased, that can be used as a flexible match.
Great. Thanks. And then David wants just a clarification that even though it says that the allowance letter is required as a required attachment, it's only a required attachment if applicable to your project, right?
Right.
Okay. All right, let's take a breath here. And allowing the opportunity for any last minute questions to be typed in. But for my part, I just want to thank IDOT. You all have been so available, so patient, and I just remarkably helpful in all of this. In our kind of post webinar and post learning collaborative separate project evaluations, this is one of the top things that people report back to us as being so helpful. Your transparency and your availability this is really unmatched in my experience of working at Active Trans for 17 years. We really have appreciated I mean, I think it just heads off so many, and hopefully you're going to see it on your end too, in terms of the clarity of the applications that you get, that it clears up so many unclear areas, and hopefully it's minimizing the number of questions that you all are getting directly especially for the, we've had upwards of 400 people on some of these webinars, so really helpful. And then I'm sure a few hundred more that have been checking out the resources and getting their questions answered post facto. So looks like there's one more. Oh no, it's just the railroad question.
Yep.
I'm going to give it another count of 30 here for last minute Q&A, and of course our friends at IDOT are still available via email for any last minute questions. You've still got a couple of weeks, so hopefully everybody's plugging away and getting those last minute things taken care of. And we wish everybody the best of luck. $125 million is a lot of money. And we're hoping it all goes out to all corners of the state and get some fantastic ped bike projects out there from, our organization's perspective. We know ITEP pays for other types of projects as well, but ped bike is our sweet spot. Michael, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, before you try to sign off, we want to thank you guys too. Having you as a resource to pull all of these webinars together and to get all the municipalities and interested parties involved is a huge help to us. And quite honestly, I was talking to Missy earlier this morning. We had some meetings yesterday going over projects that are already awarded, and and I told her, I said, this is the fun part for me. Looking at the applications, looking at the projects, putting our heads together and saying, how can we make this the best it can be? So we really appreciate you. We appreciate all the local agencies that jump in and ask questions. We try to answer as best we can. We do get the odd questions, and we appreciate that though, because that makes us think. And so hopefully through this whole process, we can all be doing a better job to get these projects built. For sure. And I feel like I'm on Facebook Live with all of the emojis come through because I love it's the little things. There's one last question from Michael. If there's a TIF district, can TIF funds be used in the match? I believe they can. Mr. Lupton, is that true?
I am not entirely sure about that, so I'd have to do a little more research on that.
Okay.
I think so, but I don't know for certain.
Okay. Michael, if you want to follow up after the fact, you can do that. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, should they email IDOT?
Yeah, go ahead and email dot.itep, and we will pass that question along.
Fantastic.
Oh,
And
Zubair
Zubair says he can
is
answer.
here and he can answer it. Can we unmute him though?
I don't know. Can
I
we
don't.
unmute him? If you can't, we can type an answer. See.
Yes, only panelists can be unmuted, unfortunately.
Okay. I'll tell you what, Zubair can, this is John. Can you send me an email? And then I will pass that answer along.
Great.
And whoever asked the question, if they would also send an email.
Perfect.
And he says, yes, TIF can be used.
Yeah, Crispina's saying she missed the answer for the question on the railroads. The answer was no. IDOT does not have the locations of those projects. And Zubair is saying yes, TIF can be used.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay, well, we're wishing everybody luck. We're wishing that every single project gets funded. It's
Now, hold
ridiculous and
yeah,
impossible,
hold
but,
on, Melody.
settle down, Melody. Best of luck to everybody. And our thoughts will be with the IDOT team as they review 300 plus applications. We wish you fortitude.
Thank you.
And looking forward to those spring announcements.
That's great. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Goodbye, everybody. Have a great week, great day.